if you ask me, building a net new model, even if you're sitting on top of a lot of data, even before you can start building a model, you need to clean that data. You need to annotate that data. You have to bring it to a level where, yeah, I can take this data and build my next model out of it, right? But what I see is that a lot of companies are realizing that, okay, even before I can put a model out there, there are some data engineering practices that I should bring in. There should be an ETL flow that I should have, which can categorize my data in terms of my data warehouse in terms of how good the data is. So it's not like you can just wake up one day and say, I'm going to build a new model. It's like there is this huge data engineering practice that sometimes does not get enough limelight, if you ask me.
Jerry Reghunadh, Senior Director of Enterprise Architecture at Data Nimbus, discusses leadership, AI adoption, and data-driven decision-making. Jerry shares insights on tools like ChatGPT, building data pipelines, and avoiding the dreaded analysis paralysis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rob Ocel, VP of Innovation at This.Labs, here for another episode of the Leadership Exchange. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Jerry Reghunadh, who's the Senior Director of Enterprise Architecture at Data Nimbus. Jerry, how are you doing today?
Hey, Rob. I'm doing pretty well. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to this podcast. Happy to be here.
That's awesome. Yeah, like one of the things that we like to do at the beginning is just give people maybe a chance to explain kind of how they arrived at that position of leadership. So if you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to kind of, how you came to be in leadership at Data Nimbus and a little bit about what you do in your role.
Okay, sure. So I started my role at Data Nimbus as one of the first employees when the company was set up. Then gradually just picked up one role after the other, and that got me to the position where I'm in. I started off as a senior developer slash lead, building a POC for a customer, became an architect, lead architect, then ran the entire product department for Data Nimbus for a while, and now I've moved on to a more customer facing role where I work closely with our customers to figure out how exactly we can take our products to them and set it up properly for them and build solutions for them.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So I had the first opportunity to meet you at an event that we were both at where we were kind of talking about AI, obviously a topic that's been on a lot of people's minds for the last 2 years. But what really sort of stood out to me is that you have this sort of role as both a technologist and a leader in technology in your company, as well as somebody who's meeting with clients and is kind of responsible for making sure that AI is not just a fad for you, but also something that delivers real value relative to what you're going to spend on it. So I guess just to get us started, can you kind of give us where you're at with kind of this AI and machine learning sort of, craze? Are you all the way peaked at the top? Are you, somewhere in the middle? Are you a doubter? Can you let people know kind of what has been your experience playing with it and kind of where you're at with it right now for your org?
Right. Okay. We are definitely on the AI bandwagon. Okay, we are not off it. We are there. I personally feel, and this is a sentiment that Data Nimbus also reflects, that AI is something that's going to stay for a while. It's going to be the next thing. The reason why we strongly feel and why I feel that way is because what we have seen trying out AI, Gen AI models ourselves, and the benefits that it just brings to the workspace, right? So me, in my role, there are two things that I do. One, I do a little bit of R&D on the side, trying to figure out where are things going, what is it that we should adopt into the company as such, so that we can build our portfolio, our strengths. And the other part is where we sit with the customer and help the customer in their data and AI journey. So that means that I'm playing around with AI models. I'm trying to figure out what I should be using. A couple of years back, when Copilot came out, I tried Copilot, liked it, told all my developers saying that, hey, $10 a month is not too much. Just get Copilot. You'll see immediate benefits. They did it and they loved what Copilot does. And very recently when Cursor came out with their improved tooling, I just called up everyone and said, "Hey, look, I don't think Copilot is the one. I think we should just go to Cursor because that gives you a much better, developer experience." Uh, that's what we all did. So we are just constantly flipping, moving around stuff. There's a fraction of the company that uses Gemini. They're proponents of Gemini. There is a part of the company that loves ChatGPT. We are playing around with those models as well and seeing how that goes. But fundamentally, when we look at what our customers are going to use, they need models that are trained for specific purposes. We are looking at how do I build a good customer 360 model? How do I build a good demand forecasting or a dynamic pricing model? Kind of things. Okay? Those are the things that we help our customers build that they can run on their data in their environment.
It's funny that you mentioned that you all are experimenting across your organization and with your team on different models. I think there's obviously this possibility that a lot of companies that maybe aren't very mature technically, meaning they don't have a lot of people on staff with a lot of interest or a lot of specialty here, feel that analysis paralysis where you're going around just Googling what's the best thing, looking for that one example and not wanting to be on the wrong side of a decision, right? They don't want to be the ones that are having the HD DVDs, and things like that. So what, for other leaders that you might be speaking to, is it just all right to just try out one model and see the most value that you can get there? Or do you have to try out 5 or 6 of them to see what matches for your org?
It's interesting that you mentioned the analysis paralysis because I myself was going through that a year back when OpenAI released the first model. I'm like, okay, I need to understand what is happening over here. Then came a waterfall of all these models that we could use, and we started realizing that look, our customers are also going to be at that same boat. So yes, what we tell our customers and what we do ourselves is we take a problem, try out a few models with varying strengths, and figure out what fits, and then take it from that point on. Most organization who has or who has a good R&D department could afford to do that experiment, but there are companies that don't have a well-established data engineering or a data science department. That's where we step in and help them do this kind of research or help them with the research that we have already done, saying that, hey, if you're trying to do this, here are the things that you could try out or we could help you with, and here are the models that we can bring to you and train for your data.
That's great. Yeah, it's so interesting too, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that AI is the type of technology wave that you actually need to be an early adopter for. Not necessarily the very first adopter of any tooling, but this is not one of those technologies or one of those moments where you want to be waiting to see where the dust settles and waiting 5 or 6 years to jump in after things have settled. Like the gap between the companies that are kind of taking the pain points now and struggling through finding those models versus the companies that are going to wait to see what becomes the standard is going to be really difficult to overcome. Like, what are your thoughts on companies that maybe are thinking about just sitting it out a little bit to kind of see what happens in the next few years?
Things are going to rapidly change in the AI space. I mean, that's what we have seen, right? I mean, the day ChatGPT came out, people were like wowed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what is this thing? And then came all those models that everyone was working on. Everyone started releasing models, and as we discussed, analysis paralysis at the end of it, right? I mean, things are changing so rapidly, so fast that it's not a good idea to wait around. There should be some initiative that organizations should be taking in terms of what is it that we want to do, because not because they want to innovate, because if you have to stay relevant in the market, you need to beat your competition, and there would be other companies who are going to get on that AI hype, try experimenting, and could potentially get ahead of you. So you need to pay attention to that AI space. You need to work towards what is it that you can do, how is it that you can leverage AI, and get value out of it to for your business and for your job.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with that. And the idea that you don't need AI to realize a moonshot for it to be worth investing in. It's exactly like what you said. There are new technologies that are being announced even this week with GitHub and things like that, where Vercel announced a bunch of them as well, where you just write in English and it will produce code for you or produce an entire UI or an entire product for you. That technology will continue to get pushed down the road, and that may or may not pan out as much as people hope or think it might. But the just sheer efficiency gain of your engineers who are leveraging some of the basic AI code assistant tools versus those that aren't, or your copy editors, or your researchers, or even your business analysts who are using these technologies intelligently versus their peers who are not, we're still talking about, even if it's 10%, 15%, 20% more efficient, it doesn't have to be that AI is suddenly making you 1,000% more efficient. Yeah. That's still on the table, but it's that even today with what's already available, people are already noticeably and incrementally better than if they didn't have them. And I think that's kind of what's pushing me to believe that people need to be in now and not waiting, because those benefits will probably compound over time more so.
Right, Rob, I could not have put that any better than what you just said. When we talk about AI adoption, it need not be that, hey, I need a model or a intelligent chatbot that my customers could use. It need not go that extent, right? It could be a good code editor like Copilot or Cursor that my developers can use, wherein their productivity just increases twofold, threefold, tenfold, just because they're using it, right? Let me give you an example, right? I mean, even in my role today, I like to code, I like to build stuff, right? So I'm building this POC for a customer, and I had to create this bunch of random data and say take an amount and split it into 10. But the easiest way to split it into 10 is, hey, I'll take this amount and divide by 10 and I get like 10 equal portions. And I'm like, that's not going to fly for the POC. That's not a real world example. So I need to split that amount into 10 portions, need not be equal, but that has to be 10 numbers in an array that should sum up to this original amount, right? Think about that 5 years back. I mean, we would have to sit down and really code it out for an hour and a half. Trust me, all I did was that went to ChatGPT and said, hey, I have a number. I want to split into 10 parts. The sum of each of the parts should be the total of this value. Show me the JavaScript code. It gave me the JavaScript code. I ran it and realized that, oh, I forgot about the precision part. It's an amount. I don't want precision above 2 decimal places. So I said, okay, modify this so that all the numbers have a precision of two digits, decimal precision of 2 digits, and the sum should also be equal to the total amount. It just fixed it. 10 minutes, I had the code ready, right? 2 hours versus 2 minutes or 10 minutes is a huge time saving, right? My POC gets done faster. If I'm pushing code into production, building a new feature, it's much faster these days. And that's how I think everyone should look at AI. I mean, it need not be a game-changing feature that they have to introduce. It could be this small little things that people could use day in, day out, coding, writing a job description, or writing a sales presentation, whatever it is, right? Get it to do the bulk of the lifting, and then you can refine your messaging according to that. That's time saver.
Great. We have more of this conversation, but first, we'd just like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs. This episode is brought to you by This.Labs, the experts in modern web development and consulting. If you're looking to scale up your development teams efficiently or just need assistance in turning your innovative ideas into reality with robust proofs of concept, This.Labs has you covered. This.Labs doesn't just build software, they build partnerships. They collaborate closely with your team to understand your unique challenges and craft tailored solutions that drive actual real results. Join the many companies that have accelerated their growth and innovation with the help of This.Labs. Visit this.co to discover how they can help you take your projects to the next level. Thank you to This.Labs and my team for sponsoring this episode and for also supporting the developer community. All right, back to our episode. So Jerry, just before that, we're talking about AI and how it delivers value kind of at different levels. But I think, if you look at the venture capital space, and you're looking at just how much investment is going into developing these AI models and AI companies, it can be difficult, I think, for companies to understand how to scale that level of hype to the investments they should be making in their organizations, right? Because, listen, for some of these people, they're making some crazy calculations that they only need a couple or even one of these AI things to take off for them to get their investment back. But for a company, people are excited to do this, but they just don't know how to set realistic goals for how AI might affect and move their bottom line. So when you're looking both at your organization or when you're looking with customers at their organizations, like how should a leader understand and set realistic goals for what AI could do for them and how much investment they should be making, especially at this stage, just to make sure that they're getting the most they can out of it?
So there are two main areas that I think when it comes to AI development that we should that I kind of figured out, or my understanding is, one is as a company, do I want to build a net new model out there, train it, and bring it to the market, saying that hey, here is a very specialized model. I'm talking about the next ChatGPT or Gemini or a Midjourney kind of model, right? I mean, whatever is pertaining to the business that I'm operating in. Do I need to build a net new model, because that's a huge investment, and it's kind of like a little dark grayish area where I don't know what the return is going to be? Or the other thing that I could do is I could take any of those available models that are out there and build the next set of feature for me, right? It could be piggybacking on the Google Vertex models, or it could be taking a model of Hugging Space and saying that, okay, I'm going to take that pre-built model and I'm going to train it on my data and build my offering, right? That's a decision that everyone should take. And I think more companies are taking the latter approach because it's much more viable, feasible. The capital cost for that is much lower than building a net new model out there. And at the end of the day, it boils down to what is the real value add, right? Is this just another glorified chat interface that I'm going to add to my shopping cart
Right.
for my customer? Or is it a truly game-changing feature that I can give to my sales team and operations team, where they could just potentially ask questions like, hey, what was my revenue recognition for the last quarter? And it just shifts through your CRM and gives you a neat graph out of it, right? That's kind of where it is.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought, because I've heard a lot of people recommend that in this era, companies really need to look inward at the data they have. What data are you sitting on? Because it's really going to be that stuff is suddenly worth a lot more. I mean, even Web 2 had this concept that owning data was valuable. I mean, that's the whole nature of why so much of the internet was seemingly free, is because our data was the price we paid for all that free internet. So I think as companies are sort of looking inward, that is interesting, right? They are, do I make something completely brand new with all of this data, or do I tailor it? For some people, they feel that when they reach into the pocket and they actually open up the pocket and they want to invest in something new, they want to take the best thing they can, because if they're already spending, they might as well get something that's not going to be out of date. So what are companies really giving up if they decide to use their data to train and tailor existing models versus like trying to set off with data scientists to create their own model? Are you giving up a lot for most companies at this point?
If you ask me, building a net new model, even if you're sitting on top of a lot of data, even before you can start building a model, you need to clean that data. You need to annotate that data. You need to make that data you have to bring it to a level where, yeah, I can take this data and build my next model out of it, right? So even before you start, and this is true for whether you're trying to build your own model or trying to take a model and train it, right? You have data sitting in your environment. It could be terabytes of data, but that doesn't mean that you can use it from day one. But what I see is that a lot of companies are realizing that, okay, even before I can put a model out there, there are some data engineering practices that I should bring in. There should be an ETL flow that I should have, which can categorize my data in terms of, or my data warehouse in terms of how good the data is. Like, segment them into the bronze, gold, and silver and gold layer, and see what is the commercial value around it, and then I can now start looking at these data and say, okay, I could potentially build a new model or a train a model, right? So it's not like you can just wake up one day and say, I'm going to build a new model. It's like there is this huge data engineering practice that sometimes does not get enough limelight, if you ask me, that companies should be aware of, saying that, okay, I need to have this good data practice where I'm ingesting a lot of data from all my customers, streams, etc. I need to clean it up. I need to classify it. I need to put them into these clean locations from where I can then start deriving the value eventually.
So earlier we seemed to agree with each other that, AI as a general set of tooling and capabilities is something that companies should not just be waiting on to see what falls out of it. But this portion where companies are relying on data either to to train customized models, maybe set aside training brand new models for some of the reasons you said, but they're considering, customizing or training models with their data. Is that similarly something that people should feel compelled to at least be experimenting with to see what they can do? Or is that one of those more advanced things where companies that maybe aren't as technologically mature or aren't as comfortable with their data yet can maybe wait a little bit to see if people build products or methodologies or tooling that makes it a little easier for the less sort of on bleeding edge technical companies to take advantage of?
The tooling is already out there.
Okay.
The tooling that you require to take your data to let's say you build your mature data warehouse or your data lake, it's already out there. Just that it's been there, but now it's slowly getting the attention it's getting. So if you're sitting in a lot of data, you need not wait around. The tooling is already out there in terms of multiple providers out there in the market. It's just a matter of, okay, how do I get that into my organization and get my data to where it is, then after which I can start thinking about the next step.
Interesting. Okay. I want to pivot a little bit. What's funny is that this kind of takes us back to where we started, because at the very beginning, I sort of jokingly asked, where you stand on this idea of AI being a hype or a fad. And I've gotten in conversations with other senior technical leaders, and I think everybody has, right? Where one set of people says, this is going to change everything. And another set of people says, there's way too much hype. At best, it's going to be like a spell checker at the end of the day, right? Something sure we all use, but nobody ever says, oh, my business would be nothing without my spell checker. So what I'd like to hear from you is just kind of what is your framework for assessing whether something has legs and potential or is a bit of a fad? And, just before we started talking, I think you and I applied this lens, not so much to crypto, which I think is where everybody pivots because it was the most recent one, but I think like the augmented reality and virtual reality sort of mini fad or mini craze that occurred maybe 8 years ago now, and still is going on to a reasonable extent, is maybe another sort of paradigm or lens to look at this through. So I'm sort of curious how you assess new technologies to decide if they're just a fad or if there actually is some value there.
Right. Good question. So my personal yardstick there is, first I would read about it a lot, try and understand what's happening. Then my first and best tool that out there, or my way of measuring it, is to try it out myself, right? I want to give it a hands-on approach before forming my own opinion. Okay, there's only so much I can read about it. There's only so many YouTube videos that I can watch. Yeah. I need to get my hands on it. The AR VR space, right? We were talking about this. I was fascinated with the original Google Lens that came out, the Google Glasses that came out. Then eventually I got my hands on a Meta Quest 2 to really try out what this AR thing is. Honestly, I did not see myself use that after two weeks, you can say that, or 2 months, you can say that's the best I could go with it. Multiple reasons around it, right? I mean, one thing, it was really uncomfortable having it around my face for a couple of hours. The charge is a problem, the weight is a problem, the entire depth perception is a problem. That's where I kind of realized that, okay, AR and VR is going to take a little bit more time to mature. The meta glasses that Facebook came out with is a good direction where we are moving in, because now we don't need an additional device there, but your spectacles could pretty much be it. And that's exactly how I approached the entire AI thing also. There was a lot of reading and learning involved. Then I really started using it, right? I mean, how is it that I can use something in my day-to-day life, right? That's where fundamentally how I approach any technology, right? Take it and build something for me to use, even before I take it to my team and say that, okay, this is something that you should adopt. Took it, like I said, I started using Copilot first, saw the value, started using Cursor, saw the value, experimented with both, saw which is better than the other one, and slowly asked my team to adopt it. Similarly, started using ChatGPT, Gemini. I mean, if you ask me, I'm a proponent of Gemini more than ChatGPT. Okay, that's a story for another day. Okay, so I kind of try to find the strength and weaknesses of all these things that are out there, and try to figure out what is it that I can use for myself. And then I look at the problems that we are trying to solve for our customers, and then think in that line, say that, okay, what is it that we could now leverage from all these learnings that we had for our customers, saying that, okay, hey, this is what you should be doing. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, if anybody could say they could have predicted where all this was going to go, oh, they were correct when they called it. I mean, yeah, it's very easy in retrospect to go back and see where all the signals were. But I agree with you, and I like that paradigm of, you know, before you try to see if a new technology will fix all of the world's problems or some problem that exists, make sure it solves one of your own problems. I think, you know, I felt that way with 3D TVs as well. I just could never figure out what show or movie I wanted to watch in 3D, except for the flying through the hills of those HD world things. And it's like, okay, that's a really cool tech demo, but I don't watch those documentaries all the time, or barely ever. So I could never figure that out. And with VR, it was very similar. It's a cool game. It's very fun to play with. It's got some interesting things that you could do with it, but nothing in my life that gets replaced by it. But with augmented reality, it was almost instantaneous. I did one of those like IKEA things or whatever, where you can put the furniture in your room and move it around and plan what you're going to do. And it was like instantaneously, it just clicks. And you're like, this is amazing. I still don't fully understand why wearables haven't gotten to the point where we can be using more augmented reality tools in our day-to-day life. But like, I'm still pretty high on that technology, even though it really, in general, hasn't panned out to be that much. But like, even though so much investment went into the metaverse and VR, I'm still pretty sour on it. But AI's had that quality since the first time I used ChatGPT, and everybody I've talked to, it's the same thing. As soon as you used it and you realized what it could do and what it might be able to do in the future, it was solving problems immediately. Yeah. And then it's just a question of how big are the problems it can be solving for me and how quickly. But I still use it, you know, almost every day. I use it very regularly for real things, you know, both fun as well as for business and serious and productivity things, and still finding out more. So I love that idea that you just need to make sure that whatever you're going to invest in solves at least one problem for you or your organization, instead of worrying that maybe it's solving problems for someone out there. Yeah. And thinking that because there's a lot of money flying around that it must be the next big thing.
I completely agree. I mean, this goes just not just for AI, right? Anything that you want to use, just give it a try, see if it really makes sense to you and adds value to you before you even start recommending it to anyone.
Awesome. Well, listen, can you let people know if they're interested in, finding out more about this, either about Data Nimbus or just connecting with you to ask more questions, where they can find you or the company online?
Data Nimbus, you can look it up online. We are there at datanimbus.com. You can personally reach me on LinkedIn, Jerry Reghunadh, or I'm there on Twitter at Jerry Manel. So Manel is my middle name. I'll share both the links with you. You can probably add that as part of.
Yeah, we'll make sure they're in the notes for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for us today. Thank you so much for Jerry for being our guest, and thanks to each of you for listening. Hope to see you all next time. And as we close out, we would just like to thank today's sponsor, This.Labs, one last time, who would like me to remind you that sometimes it's hard to bridge the gap between business objectives and tech implementation, and it can get messy. This. Is trusted by top names like Meta, Google, and T-Mobile, and they love helping business leaders fulfill their strategic digital initiatives. Check them out at this.co. One more time, that's THISDOT.co. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.